All right, so we have our app, and now we're going to start adding a login screen to this application. The reason we need this is that currently we are storing all of this data that's personalized to an individual locally on the phone, which might be fine for a while, but ultimately we may want to be able to store more data than we can do with the amount of storage that we have on the phone. Or we might want to be able to aggregate data or back up a user's data if they switch devices or we upgrade the app or they need to reinstall or something like that. So ultimately, if we were doing some sort of like a centralized company that distributed an app like Canary, we would want to be able to um, upload that data for people. And in order to do that, we would need to be able to attach it to an identity of theirs. So logging in would be important. We're going to add a login screen such that when you first come to the app, it's going to go to that login screen instead of to this tabbed screen. And then if you log in correctly, then you'll move forward to the tabbed screen. So today we're going to start in a file called the manifest. So I'm going to type in manifest and I go to Android manifest.xml. The manifest file for an Android application is a place where we keep information about things like activities, permissions, app themes, stuff, and a number of other things. You'll notice that inside of our manifest so far, we have our package name listed. We also have some settings for our application itself, including what the icon might look like, what the label for this application would be, an icon when it isn't round, whether we're allowing backups, as well as a theme for this application. We also have here our activity. We only have one activity in our application so far, the main activity. The name is listed right there. We also see a label for this activity, Canary. We see a theme for this activity, and then we see an intent filter. We use intent filters to indicate things about our application, or rather about our activity. So in this case, for example, we're indicating that this activity is our launcher. What that means is that this is going to be the first activity that we go to when the application launches. This is Android's equivalent of what we do in iOS when we go to the interface builder and check the box that says that this is the initial view controller, at which point the little gray arrow appears to the left of the view controller to indicate that this is where the user is going to enter the app. What we need to do now is we need to create another entry for a second activity inside our manifest. So I'm going to open with activity. Only the name attribute is required. So I'm going to make a new activity and it's going to be called login activity, like this. The reason that it's red right now is that login activity doesn't exist yet. So we're going to make it. But first, let's go ahead and finish here in the manifest. So we have our activity. The other thing that we now need to do is we need to take the intent filter out of the main activity and move it to the login activity, because this is now where somebody's going to start their journey with the application when they first open it. All right, so now we need to create our login activity file. What I'd like to do is go to where the main activity is located, here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the main activity file. I do that with F5. So I'm going to rename my new file login activity instead of main activity. And it's going to get created right next to main activity. It's worth noting that if I don't do this step, so if I delete this file and I go to my manifest, I do have an option in most JetBrains editors to create a file when I need one. So I can hit Option Enter here and say Create Class Login Activity. The reason that I don't do that in Android Studio is because Android Studio is currently still configured to create Java files that way. You can see that in the top menu bar, my file name appears as loginactivity.java. I don't want this to be a Java file. I want this to be a Kotlin file. So that's the reason that I'm not doing it this way. So I'm going to delete that login activity again. Delete, delete, delete. And then I'm going to go to my main activity, hit F5, copy it into login activity. I'm going to add this file to Git. Then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to take literally everything in here and I'm going to remove it. So now I have an empty login activity. And I'm going to override the onCreate method ultimately. What is the issue here? That I'm not worried about for now. So the other thing that I want to do is I want to remove this updatable conformance, which is something that we have in the main activity in order to tell the main activity when our mood entry fragment gets dismissed. We don't need that here. So now we have an almost empty activity. Finally, what I would like to do is remove all of the imports that I'm not using. I could go through and delete these one by one, but I prefer to use Control-Option-O, Optimize Imports. That'll automatically get rid of everything that I'm not using for me.